Stellar Moments of Humankind is a collection of historical stories by Stefan Zweig, first published in 1927. Each tale highlights a moment where one person's actions or chance changes history. The third story, The Discovery of Eldorado, explores the discovery of gold in California in 1848 and its dramatic consequences for one man. The story starts in January 1848 in a quiet valley in California, a wild and empty land owned by Mexico until recently. John Sutter, a Swiss man who moved to America, lives there. He is 45 years old and has big dreams. Sutter left Europe years ago, escaping debts and troubles to build a new life. He has worked hard to create a huge farm called Sutter's Fort near the American River. He grows crops, raises animals, and employs workers, hoping to become rich and powerful. California is far from busy cities, with only a few settlers and Native Americans around. Sutter likes this because it gives him control over his land and his future. Sutter needs wood to expand his farm, so he hires a carpenter named James Marshall to build a sawmill. Marshall is a skilled worker, quiet but reliable. In early 1848, he starts digging near the river to set up the mill. One morning, while checking the water channel, he sees something shining in the mud. He picks it up, small, bright pieces that look like gold. Marshall tests them by hitting them with a hammer and biting them, and they don't break. Excited but unsure, he rides to Sutter's fort to show his boss. Sutter is curious but worried. He tests the pieces himself using chemicals from an old book and confirms it, real gold. At first, Sutter wants to keep this secret. He knows gold could bring trouble. He tells Marshall and his workers not to tell anyone, hoping to finish the sawmill and secure his land before word gets out. Sutter dreams of using the gold quietly, maybe selling it little by little to grow his farm into an empire. But secrets like this don't stay hidden. One of his workers talks in a nearby town, and soon rumors spread. People whisper about gold at Sutter's place. By spring, the news explodes. Men from San Francisco and beyond start rushing to the American River, carrying shovels and pans, looking for treasure. Zweig shows how fast everything changes. The California gold rush begins, one of the wildest events in history. Thousands of people, farmers, sailors, shopkeepers, drop their lives to hunt for gold. They call it Eldorado, a mythical land of riches. Ships dock in San Francisco, and crews abandon them to join the search. Towns empty out as men head to Sutter's Valley. By 1849, the rush grows even bigger, with people coming from across America and even other countries like China and Australia. The quiet land turns into a noisy, crowded mess of tents, fights, and digging. For Sutter, this is a disaster. He thought the gold would make him rich, but instead it ruins him. His workers leave the farm to look for gold themselves, abandoning crops and animals. Strangers flood his property, digging holes and stealing whatever they find. Sutter tries to stop them, shouting that the land is his, but no one listens. The law is weak in California then. It just became part of the United States after a war with Mexico, and there are no police or courts to help. Sutter's fences are torn down, his cattle wander off, and his fields rot. The gold is everywhere, but he can't control it or profit from it. Zweig makes this chaos feel real. He describes the riverbanks covered with desperate men, the sound of picks hitting rocks, and the dust filling the air. Sutter, once a proud landowner, becomes a helpless figure, watching his dreams slip away. He tries to fight back by claiming legal rights to the gold, but the government doesn't support him. The newcomers don't care about his papers or his past hard work. They only want wealth. Sutter's fort, once a busy center, falls apart as the rush takes over. His money runs out and he starts borrowing to survive. The gold discovery changes the world too. California grows fast, turning from a lonely place into a busy state. San Francisco becomes a city almost overnight, full of shops and saloons. The United States gains power and wealth, and people everywhere hear about this Eldorado. But for Sutter, it's the opposite. By 1850, he is broke. His farm is gone, and he moves to a small house, living off charity. He spends years begging lawmakers in Washington to pay him back for his losses, claiming the gold was his. They never do. Sutter dies in 1880, poor and forgotten, in a hotel far from California. Zweig calls this a stellar moment because one small find, Marshall picking up those shiny bits, started it all. If Marshall hadn't seen the gold, or if Sutter had kept it hidden longer, history might be different. The gold rush brought millions to California, shaping America's future, but it crushed Sutter. Zweig shows the irony. The man who owned the land where gold was found got nothing from it. Sutter wanted to build an empire, but fate turned his discovery against him. The story digs into Sutter's mind too. At first he feels excited, dreaming of what the gold could do. Then fear takes over as he sees the danger. Finally, there's despair when he loses everything. Zweig writes about Sutter pacing his fort, hearing the shouts of treasure hunters outside, knowing he's powerless. It's a personal tragedy inside a huge event. Sutter isn't a hero or a villain. He's just a man caught in something bigger than himself. This moment also shows how greed moves people. The gold wasn't rare. There was so much that anyone with a pan could find some, but it drove men wild, leaving families and jobs for a chance at riches. Zweig describes ships rotting in harbors because sailors ran off, and towns turning into ghost villages. For every person who got rich, many more failed, but the dream kept them coming. Sutter's land became a symbol of that dream, even as it destroyed him. In the end, the discovery of Eldorado is about how one tiny event can explode into something massive. Sutter's story is a warning. Sometimes what seems like luck can turn into a curse. Zweig tells it with energy, making readers feel the rush of the crowd and Sutter's quiet pain. The gold rush built California, but it broke the man who started it, leaving him a shadow of his old self. His name lives on in history, tied to a discovery he never wanted to share.